who is a special agent with the FBI, and he is in the Cincinnati office. So what they're going to do is talk a little bit about their career history, their career path, give you general ideas about what to do if you're interested in law enforcement. And then at the end, we'll have time for you guys to ask questions. We'll have a Q&A, so keep that in mind as well. And I think we decided we would start with Herb. So thank you very much, and you're on.
Okay, thanks a lot, Kirk. Good morning, everybody, and thanks a lot for having me. I'm just going to start talking, and I'll try not to yell at you, but if you need me to speak up, somebody just give me a signal, and I'll do my best to make sure that that I'm heard throughout the room there. Excuse me just a second. So my name is Herb Stapleton. I'm an FBI agent here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been an FBI agent for about 14 years. Graduated from Center in 1997. And so Chris and I were just talking a little bit before this session started, and we decided to kind of do it in this order because it makes a little bit of sense with the roles that we have in the federal justice system. For the FBI to go first and probation to go second, because that's kind of where we fall in the process of enforcing federal criminal law. I know, plenty of people know sort of generally what the FBI does based on news reports and what you see on TV. And what I like to say is the FBI is just like it seems on TV, and the other 99% of the time we do paperwork. So it's kind of one of those things that there is a lot of the there is a lot of the kind of exciting element that you see there with regard to arrests and investigations, but the sort of detail of the work is a lot more extensive than some of the more fun stuff or glorified stuff that you see on television. So the FBI is charged with basically enforcing a broad range of federal criminal statutes. The FBI is a law enforcement agency, but also the primary domestic intelligence agency for the United States government. So our mission is extremely broad and deep, from enforcing federal criminal statutes related to public corruption, drugs, gangs, transnational organized crime, all matters of kind of white collar crime, all the way over into the national security side, which is more about the counterterrorism mission, preventing terrorist attacks, the counterintelligence mission, protecting our nation's secrets against hostile foreign powers or hostile foreign intelligence services that want to find out secret information. So extremely broad mission, extremely broad range of job opportunities within the FBI. I happen to be a special agent in the FBI, but there's tons of other really great opportunities, intelligence analysts, and just a whole host of things that you might not even think of, like pilots and laboratory workers and laboratory chemists and people who have all sorts of specialties. The FBI is about 35,000 total employees right now, so ton of opportunity there all across the country. So I guess I'd kind of like to just one thing I'd kind of like to just get out of the way and take a little poll here. Do we have any country music fans in the any of you guys listen to country music out there? None at all? Okay, this is going to fall super flat. Okay, yes, good. That's good. This was not going to go very well if nobody had heard of country music. So anybody heard of Chris Stapleton? Yes? Okay, you're at least being nice to me. Okay, so that is my brother. I cannot sing, otherwise I would not be here talking to you about federal law enforcement. I would be off on a bus somewhere touring with Chris Stapleton, but I get asked that a lot. So we took two very divergent paths that kind of based on each of our strengths. So one of my coworkers said to me, you and your brother have very different hair goals, which is it's not actually a goal. I just can't help this. He got all the hair genes in the family, and I was stuck having to just rely on something other than my long hair, beard, and singing ability. So I guess what I'd like to do is talk to you a little bit about my path to becoming an FBI agent. When I was at Center, I think I mentioned I graduated in 1997. I was an English and religion major at Center, and when I was ready to graduate, I had a couple of things in mind that I wanted to do, but one thing I was always interested in was law school. And so I wound up going to law school at the University of Kentucky, and I graduated from UK law in 2000. Initially, I really thought I went to law school thinking I would be a prosecutor. And somehow during the course of my law school career, I decided that wasn't what I wanted to do. And I actually went into the private practice of law, practiced with a medium-sized firm for about 4 years doing commercial litigation, commercial real estate transactions, basically corporate and commercial work for small and large corporate clients in southern West Virginia and eastern Kentucky. And I probably should go back and just say, you know, I am a Kentucky native. I grew up in eastern Kentucky, native of Johnson County. So I lived in Kentucky all my life until I graduated from law school, and then I've never been back. Basically, I've never lived in Kentucky again in the next, 20 years. But so I do have deep roots in Kentucky and really love my time at Center. So after I went from, so I practiced law for about 4 years. I enjoyed my time practicing law, but I knew it wasn't really what I wanted to do for the rest of my career for 30 or 40 years. And during that time when I was practicing law, I think it's appropriate just to mention, since today is September 11th, when I was practicing law in Huntington, that was when the September 11th terrorist attacks occurred in 2001. So I've been practicing law for a couple of years at that point, maybe a year and a half. And it wasn't like an immediate change for me, but it was a big motivator. It was kind of a cause for reflection and deciding what did I really want to do, what kind of a difference did I want to make in the world, and that's really how I started to think about a career in the FBI. And so I'm a very deliberate person, so it took me like sort of 2 years to say, okay, yes, I really want to make that jump, and I applied in 2003. Took me about 13 months to get all the way through the process, but eventually I was, and I can talk more about that with you guys if you want, about sort of the special agent process, because it's very involved, but I want to leave Kristen some time to talk too. And so I went through that process and started at the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia on June 13th of 2004. About 4.5 months of training there at the FBI Academy. A lot of it is academic work, kind of legal, interviewing, training, that sort of thing. Other parts of it are firearms training, defensive tactics, some of the things that you need sort of from a street survival standpoint to be, to become a federal agent. And successfully completed all that. And my first assignment in the FBI was in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And I had they kind of do a little ceremony when you get your orders from the academy. And when I found out I was going to Cape Girardeau, Missouri, I had to look it up on a map. I knew where Missouri was, but I had no idea where Cape Girardeau was. And it's in the southeast part of Missouri. And so I went to what's called a resident agency. And so the FBI's field operations are divided among 56 field offices. So those are sort of the primary centers of investigative and intelligence activity throughout the country. But Cape Girardeau was a resident agency, which is kind of like a satellite office out of the St. Louis field office. And so I was there as a brand new agent working with only 4 total agents in that office, and we covered 19 counties in southeast Missouri. And my responsibility was basically every kind of federal violation that came in the door in the 6 counties that I was responsible for. It was a terrifying and incredible way to start your career as an FBI agent, and in a lot of ways was really kind of the highlight of my career so far. I worked everything from drugs and gangs, kidnappings, bank robberies, white-collar crime, mortgage fraud. I just got exposed to this whole range of investigations that I wouldn't have had the opportunity necessarily to do if I'd gone to a larger office right off the bat. So we enjoyed our time there. I was there for about 4 years, and then I was rotated based on the policy at the time. I was rotated up to the Chicago field office. And as you might imagine, that's a much different experience from being a federal agent in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. The Chicago field office has about 460 FBI agents. And as a result of that level of manpower, I think Chicago is the 4th largest field office in the country, only behind Washington, D.C., New York, and Los Angeles. And so as a result of that, you become much more specialized. And so when I was in Chicago, I worked on a Eurasian organized crime squad. Of course, Chicago is a target-rich environment for organized crime. And so I had the opportunity to work basically 4 years on what was essentially one case involving a Romanian organized crime group that was active in Chicago and committing all sorts of crimes, but the major one was a multi-million-dollar tax fraud investigation. And I worked it jointly with the IRS and some other federal agencies. And that exposed me to some things that I really maybe didn't have time to do when I was in Cape Girardeau, because I had so many cases. I became exposed to some more sophisticated techniques. I had the opportunity to travel overseas to Romania and work with the federal police in the country of Romania, which was an incredible experience. That kind of opened up some new doors to me. And then from there, I took a job at the Internet Crime Complaint Center as a supervisory special agent. I did that for a couple of years. And then I came to Cincinnati as a field supervisor, running our human intelligence program, or basically what sort of you might see in the movies as like the informant program. So my guys on my squad were the primary we call them confidential human sources, but informant recruiters within the Cincinnati field office. A couple of years ago, had the opportunity to get promoted here in place in Cincinnati, which was fortunate. Didn't have to make another move, and so I currently serve as the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Cincinnati field office, which covers basically the lower half of Ohio. We have about 113 agents in Southern Ohio, and I'm kind of like every field office is run by a special agent in charge, and so I'm kind of like the second in command to our special agent in charge, Angela Byers. And my areas of focus right now, although historically have been primarily criminal investigations, my areas of focus right now are our cyber program, our cyber investigative program, and our intelligence program, along with security and crisis management and a few other things that are key to the office. So let me just say a quick word about sort of how to get into the FBI and what I see as the best path. And then I'll turn it over to Kristen and let her talk a little bit about probation. And then I'm happy to answer whatever questions you may have after that. I think there is no one path. I think that's kind of I think that's a mistake that some undergraduates fall into when they sort of settle on a career in federal law enforcement. They think it's critical that they study criminal justice in undergraduate, and that's certainly not the wrong path by any stretch of the imagination. But I feel fairly passionate about the idea that we could really stand to have more liberal arts, broad-based academic background type people within the realm of federal law enforcement. I think really the best agents that I've worked with over the years have a more broad range of academic and work experience. And so I would encourage you that whatever field you're in right now, stay with it and continue to advance in that particular field, because the FBI takes people from sort of all types of backgrounds. In my Quantico class alone, we had a ton of people who were former military, who were former police officers, who were attorneys like myself, who were accountants. We also had people the lady who sat next to me in class was a former human resources person at Carnival Cruise Lines. So I think the FBI is really looking for good people, not necessarily a specific background. Now, that having been said, there are certain backgrounds that are in high demand right now. And the ones that are in particular demand for the FBI right now are people with good, solid technical skills from a computer standpoint. So if you're a computer scientist or just kind of have the a strong technical aptitude, coding or networking or those types of things, you're going to be a really strong candidate to become an FBI agent. And it's kind of a rare mix of high-level technical skills and people who have sort of the mindset and psychology to want to move around the country and bust into houses at 6 a.m. and arrest people who may be in various states of undress, which is usually the way it is. When you arrest someone, they're almost never fully clothed. It's a harsh reality of the job. It's kind of a rare combination of skills. So if you're that type of person who has sort of a law enforcement mindset, but also has a high level of technical skill, you're going to be a very attractive candidate to the FBI. The other area that's really big right now is foreign language skills. It's particularly skills that are that you would imagine would be in high demand, like Russian, Mandarin, Arabic. Obviously, we always need Spanish speakers, but I would say those first three that I mentioned are probably in the highest demand right now. And so if you have that type of language skill or just have an aptitude for languages and could learn that, you could make yourself a really attractive candidate. I think going to law school is a great background for, and we still hire lawyers, we still hire accountants. I think my experience as an attorney, particularly in the private sector, and knowing a lot of things about banking regulations, about contracts, and those types of things, have been have been invaluable to me in my FBI career. So that's the advice that I would give you. That I think the last piece of becoming an FBI employee of any type, but particularly an agent, is patience. I think a lot of times we see people who want to say their plan is, I want to graduate from college and within a year, I want to be an FBI agent, and that's not really how it works. If that's something that you have as a goal, I would set that as a long-term goal and start finding those areas that you can gain experience that would be relevant to your job as an FBI agent, some of which I've already mentioned. But there's many paths to follow, but I think the most important one is sort of building a breadth of experience and exposure that would make you a stronger candidate for the FBI. I think that's all I got right now, Kristen. I'll turn it over to you. I hope I didn't talk too long. I'm an attorney, so I talk forever. That's how we do things. But I tried to keep it brief. So, thanks a lot for listening.
Thanks, Herb. You didn't take too long at all. My name is Kristen O'Brien, and Chris Stapleton is not my brother, unfortunately.
Yeah, you're lucky.
I'd love to meet him. But I graduated from Center in 1993. Are there any lacrosse players in the room by any chance? Anybody play lacrosse at Center? Know any lacrosse players? I can't see very well. My son is, I was going to say, I'm not Chris Stapleton's sister, but Britt O'Brien is a freshman at Center this year, and he is my son, and he's going to be playing lacrosse there. So I'm super excited that he's there at my alma mater. Couldn't be more excited for the next 4 years, and I'm really jealous and wish that I could do it all over again a lot. But anyway, that's a little side note. So I graduated in 1993. I had double majored in English and anthropology. So I was also English, Herb. And after that, I went to UK and got my master's degree in rehabilitation counseling, pretty much because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, but I knew I needed to do something that probably involved graduate school, because English and anthropology wasn't going to get me really where I wanted to be, but I knew I wanted to work with people. So after that, I was a substance abuse and mental health counselor for several years. The last thing I did was I was the director of a long-term substance abuse program for men here in Lexington, Kentucky. I was working with a lot of people that were court-ordered to counseling. I also did court-ordered domestic violence counseling, met some of the federal officers and knew that I wanted to do that. So I kind of fell into it in a different way. So I totally echo what Herb said about do your thing, and you don't know where it's going to lead you. I certainly had no idea it was going to lead me here 17 and a half years ago. So I started in 2001, and like Herb said, today is September 11th, and it's always going to be a day that is especially significant to me because I was in Washington, D.C., where we then had new officer training at the Federal Judiciary Center. And I was there, didn't know about any of the towers or anything like that, and got the word that the Pentagon had been hit, and we got evacuated to our hotel, and the training was obviously over. Now, if you become a federal probation officer, we also have an academy. We go to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center in Charleston, South Carolina. You're there for about 6 weeks, and that's where you also go through your initial firearms training. You learn testifying skills. You learn about lots of the federal crimes and statutes and how to supervise individuals. And so our role, Herb was talking about how federal cases are born. He is one of the people that investigates individuals. Once they are charged with a federal crime, they get indicted. They have an initial appearance in federal court. They are either released on bond or they're detained. If they're released on bond, we become a part of their life. I've seen plenty of people answer the door with very little clothes on when I go to do home visits, because we become a part of their life from the beginning. We become a part of the family. We do home visits, we do drug tests, we make sure that they are working if that's what the judge wants to do. We enforce whatever it is that the federal judge who has released them on bond wants them to do. So really our job, and then they may or may not go to prison, and then they get out on what we call supervised release. I am not a parole officer because, does anybody know why I am not a parole officer? Does anybody know about parole in the federal system? Does it exist anymore? Yes, Herb? That's kind of a trick question. You all probably don't know, but parole was abolished in the federal system in 1984. We do still have a few old gray parolees who just can't behave that we still are chasing around, like the Willie Nelson song, Poncho and Lefty. But anyway, we do not have parole anymore. So what we do, our job is really threefold. We supervise people at the bond level, and there are pretrial officers that do that. They are also officers that write bond reports to help the judge determine if somebody should be released on bond or not. They go to court, they may have to testify as to whether or not the person should be released on bond. We have a big role in that, helping the judges make that decision. So either they get out or they don't, and then we supervise them. Once they either plead guilty to what they have been charged with or they are found guilty by trial, often the agents such as Herb that investigated these individuals will come in and testify as part of the trial. Then once that determination is made, if they do go to federal prison, like I said, there is no parole. So they will do 85% of their sentence in federal court. That's if you get your good time. If not, you do it all. So then you get out on what's called supervised release, which is like parole, if anybody's ever heard of parole, because then you also have a probation officer who becomes a part of your life. But let me back up. Another role, if you don't like running around chasing people down and finding them in their homes or their jobs or elsewhere, which is what I do every day or most days, you could be a pre-sentence writer. We've had lots of pre-sentence writers with law degrees throughout the years. They do a very comprehensive report for the judge, for the court, that tells the person pretty much everything about the individual. We work with the agents like Herb that investigated them, whether it's from the FBI, the ATF, DEA, Secret Service, whatever agency it is that investigated the person originally. We get with them and we find out the conduct that was involved in the offense, and we write that up as part of the report. I did that for several years as well. I found that I don't like to sit still very long, and it's a lot of writing, it's a lot of research. We compute their criminal history. You go back and you find out everything that somebody's ever been charged with. It's all assessed different points, and it comes out to this, you get a criminal history category and you get an offense level. And we tell the judge, this is where they fall. This is the guideline range for sentencing. So we have a huge role in helping the court know legally what they are looking at as far as the sentence. We also help the attorneys involved. A lot of times, they lean on these pre-sentence investigators to really help them know, how much is my client looking at, how much time. So that's a big job. Those reports take usually 3 months to write, produce, get to the court. There are objections. The attorneys can let us know any objections they have to the report, and then we have 2 weeks to get those out and get them back. So that's another job in itself, that people only do that. So then they go to prison. I know I'm talking fast. I'm trying to cover all this. So they go to prison. They do 85%. They get out on supervised release. Then someone like me gets assigned their case, and we supervise them. We go do home visits, again, drug tests, make sure they're working, anything the judge wants them to do. So we supervise them for usually a minimum of 3 years. Sex offenders are usually life sentences now in federal court of supervised release. Certain drug trafficking offenses carry a possible life supervised release term. And I'm seeing more and more judges say to individuals, especially with the heroin epidemic that we have in Kentucky, especially right now, saying, we're going to do this as many times as you want. You can screw up and violate and go back to prison for a period of time. I'm going to continue to put you back on supervised release. So we work very closely with the judges. Oftentimes when somebody I'm supervising is starting to have problems again, typically it's going to be a DEA type case, I'll get back in touch with those agents and say, look, I think they're trafficking again. And then I get to do, some investigative side of things and help figure out what's going on and if there's going to be possibly a new charge. So it's a lot of information. There's a lot to being a federal probation officer, because really there are 3 completely different types of jobs in one. But like Herb said, we have people from all different backgrounds, from attorneys to counselors like me, which was kind of rare, but definitely needed because we have so many people with substance abuse and mental health issues. And so I focus on a lot of those individuals. State police officers, local police officers, state probation officers, those all make great candidates for our job. If anybody is interested in this as a career, I can help you know how to find those job listings and how to apply. And I know that we were going to open it up for questions. So if anybody has any questions. One other thing I did want to say is in just Lexington alone, and I'm kind of proud of this, other center graduates, we have the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of Kentucky. His name is Rob Duncan. He was quite a bit younger than me. I can't remember what year he graduated, but he played basketball at center. And he was just appointed the new U.S. Attorney, which means he is over all of the prosecutors for the Eastern District of Kentucky. Huge, huge honor and prestigious position. We also have the head of the Secret Service, who was an All-American swimmer at center, John Oldham. We have Brandon Marshall, who is a criminal defense attorney. After being a U.S. probation officer like me, then he went and was an assistant U.S. attorney. He was a prosecutor. And now he has gone into private practice as one of the most respected criminal defense attorneys in town. So we have quite a crew just here in Lexington alone of center grads. So that's pretty neat. So I don't know if now is the time to open it up for questions. If I missed anything, Herb.
Let me say one thing that I think I glossed over. I think I should have mentioned, but I failed to mention. If you are interested in a career with the FBI, it's a little bit, I think you can find a lot of those jobs on USA Jobs, which is the general federal government job website. It's usajobs.gov. FBI also has its own, just because we're kind of such a large entity, that it's fbijobs.gov. fbijobs.gov, and that's a place that you can explore some of the job opportunities. Even if you're not interested in applying, you can see some of the postings that have sort of different, and some of the postings are sort of general, like special agent, and that's kind of how we take all the special agent applications, and then we start kind of weeding them out from there. And some of them are more specific to specific locales or whatever. So I probably should have mentioned that as part of the process. I'm ready for questions. Are you, Kristen?
I am.
Okay, great.
Can you guys hear her?
No.
Okay. So I'm going to stand up. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you great.
Okay. You want to come in a little bit? Sorry, this is the flaw of this. So, and you don't have to stand up to ask. If you want to just say it, I'll repeat it. Okay. It's more for them to hear you.
That's really close.
Yeah, I don't know if they can see you, but why don't you just... Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, hi, my name is Brittany. I am currently a junior, but I'm looking at applying for the FBI Honors Internship Program. That is open, I think it opened in like August and it closes October 14th. And I was just wondering if you had any tips to applying to the internship, or like maybe where to apply. I can list up to 6 locations. And so I'm kind of just interested in that. Also, I did have a question because it said I currently, this past summer, I worked with the U.S. Embassy, and so I received a secret clearance. But I noticed that with the FBI, it said I had to stay in the States during the duration of the secret clearance background check. So I was just wondering if I am going to be out of the States, would that be an issue? Is there a way I can like talk about that to someone and get see kind of that issue?
Okay, so you have travel planned outside the United States during the period when the background would be ongoing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know exactly how long the background check would work. I'm going abroad in the spring, so I don't know if I should apply or anything like that.
Okay, so let me answer the first part of your question first, related to the FBI Honors Intern Program. First of all, I'm glad you're interested in that, and I hope maybe some other people in the room or other people at Center are interested in that as well. My recommendation would be to take advantage. If you really want to do the Honors Intern Program and you're not particularly set on doing it in a specific location, then I would say fill up all 6 of those slots with places that you find interesting. I would say the best way to get selected is to put Washington, D.C. down as one of those spots, because there are way more opportunities in Washington, D.C. than there are going to be in most other places. I would also say, if you want to, put Cincinnati down on one of those spots, because that's an area that I can directly influence. And I definitely want to give fair shots to qualified center graduates. That would be a priority of mine. And I have the ability to kind of have a direct influence on that process. I certainly can't promise that every center grad who applies to Cincinnati will be selected, but I can help the people who select here understand, what say the difference between a GPA at Center College might be from a different college's GPA, just to say, just transy, to pick an example off the top of my head. I don't know, but that was a joke. You guys, I'm trying to be funny here, but it's not really going all that well. Okay, Brittany's laughing because she wants a job. All right. So anyway, so that's what I would say about that. I would select all those. I want to warn you though, and this is just this is something. The FBI is a big bureaucracy, and so this is something that we haven't quite gotten right yet, and we're working on it. I think we're getting better. But if you apply for that honors internship and it's somewhere far away from home, like Washington Field Office, one thing that we've run into is that some of the students who are selected for that, their background will run right up until it's almost time for them to report. And that can cause some difficulty in trying to find places to live. And so that's something we're trying to work on. I personally and other people from the field have let them know that it's just totally not acceptable to, expect somebody who maybe never lived on their own beyond in a dorm in Center College to just go find an apartment in Washington, D.C. 2 days before they start an internship. That's not feasible. So we're working on that. And, that if you get selected for say Louisville division or Cincinnati division, that won't be as big a problem for you. We'll be able to support you a little better just because we're a smaller operation. So that would be my advice. The second piece of that is I think I can't make you any promises, but I think that's something that we could work around. So my advice to you would be absolutely apply to the internship. And then as you progress in the process, you'll be processed through the Louisville field office, and just talk to the folks there about your situation. And I think they'll be able to work through it, but just provide all that information to them. It's better to just disclose everything and provide all the information up front, and that gives more opportunity to work through it. But I think that would be something that that would not necessarily be render you unable to compete for the internship.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I'll just say too, real quickly, our internship process is a little bit looser here. So if anybody is interested, we have typically just found people internally or people that approach us. They're working on a more formalized process, and I know other districts have that. But if you're interested in doing an internship, here in Lexington, I can also help with that with U.S. probation.
That would be a fantastic internship, by the way. I mean, I mean that in all seriousness. Like, just because of the part of the process that U.S. probation is involved in, you would get to see these offenders kind of coming through the judicial system in a very up close and personal kind of way. I would expect, and the FBI internship is great too. But I think maybe, you know, a lot more people have heard of the FBI than some other agencies. But an internship with U.S. probation would be a tremendous experience for anyone who's interested in any aspect of the criminal justice system.
Thank you. I agree.
Come on, more questions? Don't be shy. You don't want to talk to these guys outside of the career chat, right? If they come
I'll answer anything. You know, if it's just you know, general stuff about the FBI or law enforcement, it doesn't just have to be about how to get in.
Yeah. We're coming up close to the speaker here.
Okay, great.
Hi guys, my name's Ty. I'm a sophomore here at Center. Now I was just curious as to, you had mentioned former military members coming into the FBI, and I was just curious as to if you saw more people coming from a particular branch or specific MOSs or jobs that they had in, or if it's pretty much spread across the board.
That's a good question. The answer is not really. I mean, you know, I guess some branches are bigger than others, so it's probably relatively proportionate. You know, like the Marines are a smaller service than, say, the Army. So I don't think there's any particular branch. You know, the military is such a diverse organization that we see people who really have a lot of different backgrounds. So you definitely see your share of sort of special ops types who come into the FBI, SEALs, Green Berets, you know, Delta guys, that kind of thing. You also see, you know, people from just sort of all different walks. Sometimes JAG officers, you know, the basically military attorneys, MPs, but sometimes people who don't really have anything to do with law enforcement. They just had some other job in the military. So I wouldn't say there's any particular specialty. I think the military is always going to be an attractive pool of candidates for the FBI. I don't know, how is it for probation? Similar? Do you guys get a lot of that, or?
We've had, I'm just thinking of my coworkers, several Marines. I think all Marines actually is what we've
Oh, really?
Marines that have been state police officers, and then
yeah.
All right, well, thank you guys.
Any other questions?
Hey, Kirk, I'd say I'd add just a quick word that might be of interest to, because the FBI is a little bit unique with regard to the special agent position, and this would be similar for other branches of federal law enforcement who have special agents. You know, the selection process is fairly intense, and is, you know, if anyone is thinking about going that route, it's worth knowing now, even if you're not going to apply for 5 or 10 years, what it entails. And so there's multiple levels of testing, one of which is what they call phase 1, which is just kind of it's more of a kind of a psychological inventory and kind of a sort of standardized logic type test. It's just kind of to test baseline reasoning capability. And a fair amount of people pass that version or that particular part. The next part is phase 2, and that's a written exercise and a structured interview. And that's where a lot of people get weeded out. Very few people actually pass that portion of the test. I think it's a huge advantage to be a liberal arts major in that setting, because you know how to write and you know how to present and talk to people for the most part, because you've had to do it. And then the other parts of it, you know, you have to pass a physical fitness test, which for new agents is fairly rigorous. For old guys like me, it's kind of easy. But for the new agents, it's a fairly rigorous process, but very achievable. You have to take a polygraph in order to get your top secret clearance. So they're going to test you on all sorts of things like, are you being influenced by a foreign power? are you under the influence of drugs, all that kind of stuff. Background check, there's an extensive background check. You have to list every place you've ever lived. So I think it's just something to be mindful of. Not that any of you probably have, serious things on your record, but it's something to, if you're interested in this line of work, and I think it's probably the same for probation, they're really going to dig into your background, and it's just worth being mindful of the fact that keeping yourself sort of on the straight and narrow, no drug use, none of that kind of stuff, is the best way to achieve that. And it took me about 13 months from the time I applied online until I entered on duty at the academy, and that was, I think, by a couple of months, the shortest time period of anybody in my class. So it's a fairly extensive process, and it's something to be aware of.
Same. We also go through FBI background investigations, and exactly probably the same process, and are reinvestigated every 7 years. So, obviously they hold us to a very high standard of ethics and behavior, and we're representing the United States, and so that is something definitely. I have known people that I grew up with or knew, in my early 20s that would not have been able to get these types of jobs because of some bad decisions. So it is something to keep in mind going forward from here. And you guys are babies, but you have to be hired by the time you are 37 and a half. I don't know if it's the same with you, Herb.
Yes.
Because we are considered, we get hazardous duty retirement pay. And so we have to be done. They consider us ancient by the time we're 57 and a half, and we have to retire. So you've got to get your 20 years in, and you have to be at least 50 years old to retire.
Yep.
But the great news is we get to retire really young.
I can retire from the FBI in less than 6 years, believe it or not. No, 6 years, almost on the nose. So, and I might not look young to you, but someday I'm fairly young compared to other people who are thinking about retiring.
Yeah, me too. I could retire in 2.5, which is hard to believe. Probably won't. I could stay for 10 more years if I wanted to, but I started young, so that helped.
Yeah, I started in the FBI when I was 29 years old. That's about average for an FBI agent. I think 29 and a half is the average. So it's not something that a lot of people just go right out of college and do for whatever that's worth. But it's worth the wait. I wouldn't change my career for anything. I love this job. I think it's the best job in the world, and I don't think anybody in this room would be sorry if they went into a career with the FBI or another federal law enforcement agency. I really have worked with some great partners from parole, Secret Service, DEA, ATF, HSI, the whole alphabet soup. I've worked with almost any law enforcement agency you can think of from a federal standpoint, and those are all great jobs. They really are. They're not as good as the FBI, but they're all great.
And you said parole. You used the parole word.
I'm sorry. It's old habits. Probation.
Everybody does.
Probation.
I have a quick question, kind of speaking about retirement and all that. What kind of hours do you guys work? And I know that would vary at times, but in general, what's a hours workload for you? Go ahead, Kristen.
I would say mine's maybe a little different than Herb. I think you guys have the differential. You're a probation officer, you're any federal agent 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We often work what we call non-traditional hours. You can't find people doing stuff they're not supposed to be doing from 9 to 5. So we go out at night a lot, even sometimes on the weekends, supervising people. Now, if you want to be a pre-sentence writer for U.S. probation, you're going to have a 9 to 5 desk job, and you get to go home, but my job is very different. It's not hugely uncommon, hugely common that I have to work outside of normal hours, but I usually do that just to, do the job to the best of my ability and work at night, work on the weekends sometimes, catch people when they least expect us to be coming to visit is sort of the goal there. But anytime that we do work over, we get comp time, we get flex time. So that's very nice. Other agencies, and I think FBI may be the one I know that the U.S. Marshals, which is an agency we haven't talked about, they get paid 25% more than the rest of us because they are on call. They pretty much are on call all the time, and they do get called out a lot, but then they don't get the flex and the comp time like I do. So it's sort of a, you know, a little different, but same.
Yeah, so Kristen's absolutely correct. There is a difference in the way that our pay scale works. This is an area where federal law enforcement agencies differ in how they implement this particular policy, but I'll tell you how the FBI does it. So basically we get what's called availability pay. And the idea is that we have to be available 24/7. And so my hours, now that I'm in more of a leadership role, my hours are more regular than they used to be, but that's not to say that, you know, we had a shooting downtown in Cincinnati just last week. And, you know, when a critical incident like that occurs, then we just have to respond, and we have to work the hours that are, fortunately, CPD, Cincinnati Police Department, had that well in hand. But in a situation like that, that could lead to sort of, you know, 24/7 shift work for an extended period of time. So we're on call 24/7. So we get paid 25% availability pay on top of our base pay. In exchange for that, we're on call 24/7, and in the FBI, we work an extra 10 hours per week of basic time. So what we have to do is we have to average 2 hours a day. I won't get too much in the details, but the idea is that you would work a 10-hour day, 5 days a week. Or if for some reason, you know, you have to work on Saturday or whatever, that can count as your availability pay too. So my normal day is 10 hours and 45 minutes. So fairly long hours. You know, there's some flexibility in that though, just because there are times when I know I'm going to get called out and I'm going to work for 16 hours. So there may be some days when I'm only going to work 8 hours because I know there's going to be a time when I'm going to have to really buckle down. Not every federal agency implements that particular policy in that way, but the FBI does. So our hours are unpredictable. When I was a street agent, I would work just really random hours. I mean, it was, but you know, I loved what I was doing so much that it didn't seem, and I still love what I'm doing, but you know, those didn't seem like difficult hours to me. I remember one time when I was in Chicago and my case was really kind of heated up. We were just doing a lot of operational activity. My wife called me one day and she said, "Do you know we haven't talked in a week?" And I was like, "Oh, no, that's probably not good. I need to fix that." So, you know, sometimes you just get kind of wrapped up in what you're doing and you almost forget what else is happening in the world. So, but those never seemed, you know, even the 80, 90 hour weeks never seemed like long ones to me because I was so passionate and invested in what I was doing. So that's how it works in the FBI.
Last chance for questions. Anybody have any final questions? Any closing thoughts? I think we're wrapping it up now.
Well, I'll let Kristen have the last word since she's more articulate than I. I want to say it's just thrilling to me to see kind of a packed house for this topic. I've talked to some other people who are involved in the hiring process for the FBI, and I'm really passionate about the concept that Center in particular, but just that liberal arts school graduates, I think are fantastic candidates for federal law enforcement because what you learn is critical thinking. And I think in particular in this day and age, what we need in law enforcement is outstanding critical thinkers. And so I would just encourage you to continue to pursue this path. You will not regret it. You will not probably get rich doing this. I heard one person describe it as a get rich slow scheme because the retirement benefits are pretty good. But you will be able to, you know, you'll live a comfortable lifestyle and you'll get to do something that's really important to the future of our country and our world. And I think I just don't think anyone would ever regret pursuing this particular avenue. And I just want to make myself personally available. If you think you want to be an FBI agent or you're interested in some other path in the FBI, Kirk has my contact information, and you are welcome to send me an email directly to the email address that Kirk has, and I'll answer any question that you have. And I'll be on campus in October. My wife's 20th reunion is that year, so maybe if you see me around campus and recognize the face, I'm happy to talk to you then too.
Thank you, Herb.
my 25th reunion is in October, and so I will be there as well, which my freshman son is very terrified about. I'll be running around campus as well, and anyway, but thank you all so much for having us. This has been great, and it is great to see so many people interested in our career path. It is a little different, but it is never boring. It is always, you know, if you're somebody who likes, you know, not knowing what your day is going to be like a lot of times, and just, you know, being able to go with the flow and be out in the community, it's a great career. And they do give you great time off. We were talking about how much we do work and how you always got to be available, but lots of leave time, sick time. It's a very, very flexible job when you need it to be. So it's been great for me having a family. But please, if anybody wants to reach out about internships, more questions, anything like that, Kirk has my information as well. So just thank you all for your time.
And thank you.